Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Balam Bhalavatam Chaham Kamarogavi Varjitam. Balam Bhalavatam Chaham Kamarogavi Varjatam. Dharma Viruddha Bhuteshu Kamosmi Bharatarshava. Kamosmi Bharatarshava. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Again, welcome to our Sunday morning Satsang. For those of you who've been following us over the past few weeks, you will remember that we were in verse 11 of chapter 7 of Bhagavad Gita. And if you observe that in our last session, we did half of the verse, or half of verse 11. And so very briefly this morning, we will conclude the other half of the verse. And this is verse 11 of chapter 7. If you have your Bhagavad Gita with you, Balam Balavatam Chaham Kamaraga Vivarjitam Dharma Viruddho Bhuteshu Kamosmi Bharatarshava. We mentioned that the first half, that Balam Balavatam Chaham. We said that Bhagavan is saying here in this verse that I am the strength in the strong. We also mentioned Kamarag Vivarjitam. But that strength that is devoid of desire and attachment. So that's the first two lines that we discussed in our last satsang. So the second two lines, well, the second line is Dharma Viruddho Bhuteshu Kamosmi Bharatarshava. Dharma Aviruddha. It says here that we know the meaning of dharma. Means our duty, our sacred duty. But aviruddha here means that dharma aviruddha bhuteshu kamosmi bharatarshava. That dharma that is not against what is prescribed for us, because dharma can be also interpreted as duties. And we can consider many things our duties, whether they are scriptural, whether they are spiritual. We can just have a duty. But aviruddha means that which is compatible with. So dharma aviruddha kamosmi. That the desires that we have should be desires that are compatible with dharma, that is compatible with our spiritual purpose in life. So, dharma aviruddha bhuteshu kamosmi bharatarshava. The Sri Krishna here is saying that this kam, that we discussed in the first line, this desire that we have, should be in line with our spiritual cause. Now, what does that mean? There's a beautiful verse that helps us to understand that a little bit more. This is how it goes. This verse it's written in Bhakti Rasamrit Sindhu, but it's also in Vayu Puran and Hari Bhakti Vilas. So it goes like this. Anukulasya sankalpa pratikulasya varjanam rakshasya sthiti vishvaso gopatitvevanam tatha. This is Hari Bhakti Vilas, the 11th chapter, verse 676. So here, What it means is that we must desire in line with Bhagwan's desire. Now, how do we know what God's desire is? Well, Bhagwan has given his law books, Bhagavad Gita, Ved, Ramayana, etc., Puranas, Upanishad. These are God's law books. So, anukulasya sankalpa pratikulasya varjanam. That what we have to do is desire in accordance with the desire of God. Because by nature we are His servants. And so the duty of the servant is to fulfill the desire of the master. Isn't that correct? And secondly, pratikulasya varjanam means not to desire against the desire of God. Now both those things can mean the same thing, but not necessarily. Because not to desire against God's desire is that sometimes, whatever we get in life, depending on how we understand it, can be rooted in our own perception of how things work in life. And so sometimes we get something, and for example, if it's a good thing, we'll praise ourselves. We'll give ourselves a compliment. We tap yourself on the shoulder. I've worked so hard. I have done this. I have done that correctly, and I've been able to achieve this thing. However, on the other hand, when something unfavorable goes on in our lives, then what do? We don't normally, accept it as a fault of ours. This is a long katha, but we very quickly we blame it on another situation, on another person, or even on God. So what we have to do is to understand and not to desire against the desire of God, that when things come our way, that is based on the fruits of our karma. May not necessarily be in this life, but purva janma kritam papam. That we reap the fruits of our past lives as well. So let's don't blame it on God or anybody else, but let's accept it in the same way that we accept that when something good happens to us, that it's been our making. Because God gives us the results that we need and things that we've worked for and things that are appropriate for us now and things that we can handle. There's a beautiful little example that we can use, how to desire in accordance with God's desires and not to desire against Him. This is a humorous story, but this is how it goes. There was a few people crossing a river, and there was this Babaji in the boat as well, this little canoe, and so they're crossing a river. And suddenly, all of a sudden, in front of the canoe, there are many people in it, and there's the captain of the boat. And so all of a sudden, a whirlpool shows up in front of the boat. And so everybody got scared. Everyone got scared. They started praying, who believed in Hanumanji. They started Hanuman Chalisa, Bhagwan Shankar, Hanumanji, Bhagwan Sri Krishna, people from other religions. People started praying whatever prayer they know that they're going to die now. So there was this Babaji in the boat. And the Babas, they walk around with a little kamandal, right? This little pot that they have to drink water in. So when the Babaji saw this little whirlpool, not little, but it will pull this boat down. So the Babaji took his little pot and he started taking water from the river and pouring it in the boat. Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. He's pouring water in the boat and everybody's going like, Hare Babaji, what are you doing? We're about to die. And you're pouring more water into the boat. If we have any chance of survival, you're already, helping the boat to sink. He says, well, everybody has agreed it looks like we will all die. So if we will all die today, it means that this is what Bhagwan wants. So because I think this is what Bhagwan wants, I'm helping him. I'm pouring water into the boat. So this is Babaji's interpretation of how to desire in accordance with God's desires. So they're just a few seconds away, and all of a sudden the whirlpool disappeared. And everybody, breathed a sigh of relief. Oh, thank God. So they're going to make it. And then Babaji took his little kamanda, and he's doing the same thing. Hare Ram, Ram Ram. He's emptying the boat. They said, what are you doing now? We're safe. You don't have to do any of that. He says, no, you don't understand. Babaji says, you don't understand. God has changed his mind, and he has decided that we're not going to die today. He doesn't want us to die, so if we're not going to die, I'm helping him to fulfill what he wants. So I'm emptying the boat. I'm emptying the water from the boat. So it's a humorous story, but this is what it means, that we should not desire against the desire of God. We should have, that which helps. We should not do things, we talk about, surrender and things like that, Desire that which doesn't destroy the lives of others. Sometimes we have a desire, and if it's fulfilled, it's at the expense of others. Other people's welfare would be in jeopardy because of a desire that we have. Sometimes we desire that other people will fail in something that they're doing, only because we have tried and we have failed. Then somewhere deep within us, we don't think that person should be successful. And so we're rooting for them to fail as well so that we can be the same. And sometimes to ensure that those people fail, we pursue whatever we're doing to ensure that they fail, we pursue that relentlessly. Whatever they're doing, you're working against them. Now, these desires are not good. Desires generally are not bad, depending on what the desires are. But we should not have desires that's going to be harmful to us or to others. There's a Chaupai in Ramayana that can explain this for us.
बार बार गही चरण सको छो, बार बार गही चरण सको छो, चली बिचारी विबुध मति पोते, चली बिचारी विबुध मति पोते। श्री राम जय राम जय जय राम, श्री राम जय राम जय जय राम, श्री राम जय राम जय जय राम, श्री राम जय राम जय जय राम। उच्च निवास नीची, उच्च निवास नीची कर तूती, उच्च निवास नीची कर तूती, देखी न सकही पराई बभूति, देखी न सकही पराई बभूति। श्री राम जय राम जय जय राम, 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 श्री राम जय राम जय जय राम।
So this Chaupai from Ayodhya Khan is telling us that for some human beings, their abode, their status might be very, very high. But bar that ucha nivasu, that the status is very high. They have all the best things, living a high life. Nichi kartuti, but their doings, their actions are very mean. Very low actions while you live a high type of life. So, dekhi na sakahi padai vibhuti, that people of this type of approach, if their status is high and their actions are mean, these people will never be able to tolerate the prosperity of others. So this is something we cannot do. These are not desires that we should have. Because if we do things to ensure the failure of others, then what would happen? When we think we have become successful, when we associate their failure as being instrumental in our part, then what we'll do? We'll do it again. And all of a sudden, that is a life we're living full time. Forgetting about your purpose and what you can do and accomplish in life and working for the failure of others. So this is not something that we can do based on what this verse is saying. Not to desire against the desire of God. So here's another beautiful thing. We always hear that desires should be removed, that we shouldn't have desires. So let's don't misinterpret the desires that we're talking about, because so many things happen because of desires. And we should not remove them all, because they're all, even what we ate this morning is because of a desire. What we were wearing today or yesterday was because of a desire. The fact that for those of you who are joining us in Satsang is because of a desire. Depending on the place and the situation, desires will be different. If you live in a little, a tarp, a tent, and it's leaking, your desire will be to have a tarp that doesn't leak, or to have a little logi that you can fit inside so it doesn't leak. You're not going to desire for much. If you're traveling in a train like New York City or wherever you live and the train gets stuck, sometimes it's happened, in the middle of the track and it's underground and it's dark and you just have to wait for a few minutes, but you get uneasy. At that point in time, you're not thinking about anything else. Your only desire is that, can this train go already? So depending on the situation, these are social desires. Depending on the situation, so these desires are not bad desires, but we must ensure that we're not desiring against what Bhagavan wants, desiring against the scriptures. For a person who's extremely wealthy, he has $99 billion. You know what he's desiring? When can I get to 100? So these are the desires we have. So desires for a different reason, but we must work towards the desires that are good for us and for community and for humanity as a whole. So the basis of all desires is not necessarily misery. It's if the desire is adharmic, if it's wrong for us. Because not usually bad, Bhagavan is saying here in this verse that, O Bharatarshava, Kamasmi. Sri Krishna is saying that the desires that are right, that is me. That I am desire. Kam means here that, the desire is a Shakti, it's a power. And without this power of desire, there will be no creation, there will be nothing. So what should this desire be? Like we said, this desire should be dharma abhiruddha, unopposed to our dharma, unopposed to our ethics and our principles. Let's take one more example before we close this part of the katha. Suppose a person, is free from ahankar. We talked about it a few weeks ago, or false pride. Suppose a person has lots of talents, lots of skills, lots of wisdom, and he has no desire. What's going to happen? He has no desire to do anything. Then all the intelligence that he has, all the talents and skills and wisdom that he has will die with him. He won't teach it to anybody. So you have to have the desire to share this knowledge that you have. That's a desire too, but that's a proper desire. Oh, I don't have any desire to talk. I don't want to talk to anybody. I don't want to write anything. I don't want to share anything. That's committing pap. So a desire is necessary there. So it's not about not having desire. That's not even possible. Having the right desires. So all desires entertained by a person like that would be good desires, and desires that can bring harm to people, those are not necessarily good, those will be harmful. Let's just take one more chaupai before we close our pravachan.
परहित बस जिनके मन माही, परहित बस जिनके मन माही, तिन कहु जग दुर्लभ कछु नाहि। राम सिया राम जय जय राम, बोलो राम सिया राम जय जय राम। ओ तनु तजितात जाहु मम धामा, तनु तजितात जाहु मम धामा। देहु काहु तुम पर न कामा। राम सिया राम जय जय राम, बोलो राम सिया राम जय जय राम, बोलो राम सिया राम जय जय राम।
Pare the vas jinke man mahi, that there's nothing in the world that is beyond the reach of those who have the best interest of others at heart. So this is beneficial desires. These are desires that can be dharmic, that is allowed, desires that we should have, desiring to help somebody, beneficial desires that are not opposed to Bhagavan. So the Chaupai here tells us, if we desire, like for example, to help someone, to do good in the world, to help humanity, then there is nothing in the world that is beyond the reach of those people who have the best interests of others at heart. That's a sattvic desire, that's a dharmic desire. That even Bhagavan, sometimes we call the universe, we call God the universe. That's fine. Because at least according to Sanatana Dharma, this entire universe, water, fire, earth, etc., are all an expansion of God. So you can call the universe if you want. It's not different from God, at least according to Sanatana philosophy. The air and space are all Bhagavan's prakriti, his energy. We discussed this a few weeks ago. So when you have a desire like that, Bhagavan will help you to fulfill it. God will come and help you to ensure that those desires are fulfilled. If you have a bad one, you're on your own. If you have a good one, a selfless desire, the universe comes into play and will help you to bring it to fruition. So our dharma is in keeping with these principles, with these sattvic desires. And so this is the beauty. This type of dharma is the beauty of Bhagavan. This is why Bhagavan says that a desire of such type is me. Because only beautiful things can come out of such desires. Because these desires are expressions of Bhagavan. These desires are unopposed to dharma. Because remember previously he indicated that, I'm the buddhi in the brilliant person. Buddhimat. I'm the bal, the strength in the strong. So Sri Krishna here said that I am this desire which is not against dharma, and if a desire is against dharma, desire prompted activities that are against dharma, they form karma, right? Our desires will form karma, because how is karma formed? What is happening in the mind? Mana eva manushyanam karanam bandha mokshayoha. That the mind alone, Brahma Bindu Upanishad, second verse, and the mind alone is responsible for if we become free or if we live in bondage. So this will be prompted by our desires. Mana eva manushyanam. So this is how desires will form karma. By our thought process, because what we think, we act upon. So here to just close this aspect of what we're doing today, the second verse, discussing the second verse, that we should have desire for spiritual evolution and spiritual emancipation. That desire is not against the Veda, it's not against Bhagavad, it's not against the scriptures. So when a person is free from attachment, when a person whose desires are free from attachment, then that person has strength in his words and actions. For example, when nothing is in it for you, when such a person speaks, there's power in his words. When such a person acts, there's influence, positive influence in his actions, because he's not looking forward for anything. Why? Because your strength is limited when your desire is attached to some kind of outcome for you. When one drops the notion of mind from the equation, whatever capacity you're functioning in, those thoughts, those selfless thoughts become Bhagavan's thoughts. They become God's thoughts. For example, if you're in an organization, let's say a religious organization, for example, you're an office bearer in a religious organization, and you serve that organization, not to profit in any way, not to profit in any form of, or the other, to profit meaning not monetarily, but to profit in terms of praise and publicity. That you have something in it that you want to serve because you want people to know, or you want people to praise you, or whatever you do, they should recognize it. Those are all selfish desires, and that desire is not completely free. It's not God's desire. It's not Bhagavan's. He would not help you in such a thing because you're looking for something from it. If you serve in the office, in the executive committee for religious organization especially, and we do it selflessly in the spirit, in the mindset of seva, selfless service, then unquestionably, undoubtedly, not only you, but that organization, that whole community would enjoy resounding success. But if you are there to have some benefit for yourself, everything will fail. That is how it works. It will become, for example, if it's a mandir, it will become a social and not only a social, but even a spiritual disaster. But it will have the shape of a mandir. It will be called a mandir. It would have murtis. But socially and spiritually, it would not bring any peace. It would not bring any contentment and fulfillment to the people who are involved. Why? Because it's made on selfish desires. So these are a few examples, my dear friends, of the desires that we should have. It is not possible for us not to have desires, but we should have proper desires that are fulfilling the bigger picture, our purpose in life. Desires to help others, to ensure that they can become a better person. Desire to share whatever you have, that is charity. You don't have to write a check if you're doing charity. You can lead the blind across the road, and that is charity. You can give a good word of advice, and that is charity. You can be willing to ensure others are okay whether you do anything or not, but it's a mindset, and that is charity. Mana eva manushyanam, because karma is caused from what is in the mind, not what you do externally. Because remember, things are built twice, one in the head and secondly physically, right? So let's close that aspect of I just want to mention a few more things that are happening. Like I said, this is a very auspicious month. For those of you who have observed, we have just celebrated what we call Sharad Purnima. Many of you know what Sharad Purnima is. It is always a full moon night that follows the Sharad Navratri, right? Sharad Navratri meaning the one that just went by. We have Ashwin, or the spring Navrat, and then we have the fall Navrat, or Ashwin, and then Sharad Navratri. So then we had a full moon, night 2 days ago, and we call it Sharad Purnima. Many people know of this Purnima because, for example, for some of us who don't know anything more about Sharad Purnima, we know about, on this day we should make some kheer. Most Hindus do that, right? You make some kheer, some people make kheer puri, some people just make kheer. What you do with it, you make the kheer and then you put it outside in the night. We put it outside, like on your roof. Well, I guess if you live in India, you have a terrace, but other places, you find a place where it's open to the moon. People put their kheer there in a bowl and leave it all night. Why? Because they want this kheer to, to catch the moonlight, to catch what we call the, Chandi ki thandak, that's what it's called. The cool reflection and energy of the moon. The sun is hot and the moon is cool, right? So the reason why we do this is that it is on this night that in the whole year, this is when the moon is closest to the earth. And so the energies of the moon, the healing energies of the moon are closest to the earth, so you do something to capture that healing energy. And so to do that, kheer is recommended. You put it out there and then you take it and eat it, so you're eating that energy. So generally people leave the kheer there all night. But I remember once, many, many years ago, a yogi had said to me that, that is right, you can do that, but there's a little further trick to it. And the trick is that don't leave it all night. Most people leave it all night. He said leave it only up to midnight. Why? Because leave it while there's a waxing moon. You know waxing and waning moon? When the moon is getting bigger and stronger and brighter and more beautiful, and then after midnight it starts getting smaller and weaker and less energetic. That's a waning moon. So what you want to do is when you put your kheer there, you want to leave it there while the moon is waxing, and when the waxing period is finished, then you take it out. And you can eat it all the same night, or you can leave it for the next day. So people know Sharad Purnima as this. This is Sharad Purnima. On this night, they make kheer, they put it outside. But there's something else. Another very, very beautiful thing that has happened in Sharad Purnima, the full moon, the full moon night that went by. And what happened there, many of us will know this also. It's called, the Ras Leela. Ras Leela of Bhagavan Sri Krishna. This is recorded in Bhagavad. It's called the Ras Panchadhyay because it's written in the 10th book of Bhagavad Mahapuran, the 10th canto and the 29th chapter, 29 to 33rd chapter. So it's like 5 chapters there that explains the Ras Leela. And Ras Leela is, most of you know, when Bhagavan Sri Krishna fulfilled the desires of the gopis to, so that they can all feel that Krishna is spending some time and having this divine dance with each gopi, because Krishna is one. So all the gopis, they love Sri Krishna, but in Ras Leela, the gopis felt that Bhagavan Sri Krishna is giving all of them personal personal attention. So we're not going to go through this katha. This is a huge katha, but let's just quote the first verse so that we can have a little bit more information on what Ras Leela is and what happened there. On Sharad Purnima, the night of Sharad Purnima, Bhagavan Sri Krishna did Ras Leela. Bala Mukunda Jai Nandalala Krishna Kandhaiya Jai Gopala. Bala Mukunda Jai Nandalala Krishna Kandhaiya Jai Gopala. Jai Gopala Jai Gopala Krishna Kandhaiya Jai Gopala.
Jai Gopala Jai Gopala Krishna Kandhaiya Jai Gopala.
Jai Gopala Jai Gopala Krishna Kandhaiya Jai Gopala.
Jai Gopala Jai Gopala Krishna Kandhaiya Jai Gopala.
O Bala Mukunda Jai Nandalala Krishna Kandhaiya Jai Gopala.
O Bala Mukunda Jai Nandalala Krishna Kandhaiya Jai Gopala.
Krishna Kandhaiya Jai Gopala.
Krishna Kandhaiya Jai Gopala.
Bhagavan Pita Ratri Sharadot Pulla Mallika Viksharantum Manas Chakre Yogamaya Mupasita. Bhagavan Piya Ratri Sharado Pulamallika Viksharantum Manaschakre Yogamaya Mupasita. Yogamaya Mupasita.
Bala Mukunda Jai Nandalala Krishna Kandhaiya Jai Gopala. Bala Mukunda Jai Nandalala Krishna Kandhaiya Jai Gopala. Jai Gopala Jai Gopala Krishna Kandhaiya Jai Gopala. Jai Gopala Jai Gopala Krishna Kandhaiya Jai Gopala.
Bala Mukunda Jai Nandalala Krishna Kandhaiya Jai Gopala.
Bala Mukunda Jai Gopala Krishna Kandhaiya Jai Gopala.
Jai Gopala. This is actually the first verse of the 29th chapter. Like I said, it goes from chapter 29 to chapter 33, so it's a lot. But here, it explains very briefly in this chapter that it was the night of Ras Leela, of course, and here Sri Krishna, the Supreme Personality, Bhagavan, is in all his opulences. Bhagavan Sri Krishna is showing his spiritual potency. Remember, if you observe here, the word Yog Maya is again used here in Navratri. We talked about this word. Yoga Maya, this is another word of Durga. Yoga Maya Shakti, Chitta Shakti, Bhagavan's energy. And so this is the energy that makes everything that we consider or perceive to be impossible, makes it into possible. This energy of Bhagavan is called Durga. It's called Yog Maya Shakti, as used in Bhagavad Mahapuran. This is the first verse, the word is used there. So Bhagavanji here, like I said, in all his opulences, when he saw this autumn season that is so beautiful, and the night is so scented with blooming flowers and jasmine flowers, etc., according to Bhagavad Mahapuran, he decided that he will start blowing his flute. The basuri is basuri wala, and he would do so to give the gopis to bring more spiritual ecstasy into the minds of the gopis who are all at home. This is night. And so according to the verse here, to fulfill the purpose of giving spiritual joy to all the gopis, it says there's yoga mayam. But there's something else that Bhagavan did. According to two verses from this verse, Bhagavan also, if there were 1,008 gopis, Bhagavan became a separate Krishna for each gopi. Now this is the beauty of Ras Leela, right? But before that happened, there's also in the 31st chapter, there's in Bhagavad Mahapuran, there's something called the Gopi Gita. Why? Because when Bhagavan Sri Krishna blew his basuri and he attracted all the gopis, when Bhagavan became one for each gopi, every gopi started thinking, oh, now I have Sri Krishna for myself. So Bhagavan is reading the minds of all these gopis and he's thinking, oh, they're becoming very, very possessive in their minds. And so Bhagavan disappeared. He disappeared completely from Rasleela. And so the gopis all of a sudden realized Krishna is not there. This is a long, beautiful katha, but when they realized that Krishna is not there, they started searching. This is in the dead of night, and they're searching all over the place. They cannot find Kanhaiya. The gopis now, when they give up searching, they started praying. They started crying out to Sri Krishna in the form of a beautiful, what is called the Gopi Gita. Gita means song, sung by the gopis. And this is in the 31st chapter. I'll just quote one verse for you so you hear how it goes. But if you want to find it, it's in the 31st chapter in the 10th book of Bhagavad Mahapuran. It's a beautiful prayer by the gopis. And they started praying in this way. Jayati te dikam janmana braja shrayata indira shashvadratrahi jayati te dikam janmana braja shayat indira shashvadratrahi daita drishyata dikshutavaka daita drishyata dikshutavaka soidrita sava Chinvate soivita savas tvam vichintaye. It's long, the entire chapter is that prayer, but beautiful. Jayati te dikam janmana braja. The gopis are saying that, oh beloved Krishna, that it is because of your birth in this land of Braj that is why this land is so beautiful. This particular is exceedingly beautiful and glorious. It is because of your birth that Shrayata Indra Shashvadatrahi. Indra here means Lakshmi. It is because of your birth in this land that is why Lakshmi lives here in the form of a person, Rukmini. The gopis are glorifying Sri Krishna because of you. This land is so beautiful because of you. Lakshmi lives here in person, who is no other than the goddess of fortune. They're always here. It is only for your sake that we, your devoted servants, are even alive. Without you, we have no reason to be alive. And we've been searching for you everywhere. So please, show us, O Kanhaiya, show us your form again. And so when they did this whole Gopi Gita, then of course Bhagavan, listening to their prayers, Bhagavan came, and like I said, the verse here, the third verse in the 33rd chapter says that Dvayo. It has Dvayo Dvayo, means Dvayor Dayo, means that Bhagavan placed himself between each gopi. Now there are many, many gopis, but Bhagavan placed himself between each gopi. the Ras Leela started, all the gopis were filled with ecstasy, with spiritual joy. And so when we know of Sharad Purnima, this is a short form of the Katha, of course. When we talk about Sharad Purnima, then we must know also that this is the night that Bhagavan did Ras Leela. Ras Leela is such a popular thing, and we should also remember him. Another very significant thing that happened in the last 5,000 years when it comes to that which is auspicious on the night of Sharad Purnima is that in the last 5,000 years we've had 5 Jagat Gurus. Not anyone who gives himself a title, but authentic, original Jagat Gurus, right? These are divine personalities. And so the first one was, Adi Shankaracharya, as we know. There was Jagat Guru Nimbarkacharya, Jagat Guru Ramanujacharya. There was Jagat Guru Madhava Acharya. And then more recently, in the year 1922, on January 14th, someone else was born, and his name was Ram Kripalu Tripathi. Now that name turned into an international icon by the name of Jagat Guru Kripaluji Maharaj. On the night of Sharad Purnima, this saint also descended upon earth. And so, just to give you a very brief history of what I'm talking about, actually on the 14th of January 1957, there's a body in India that's called the Kashi Vidvat Parishad. This is the body of 500 of the topmost scholars in India, scholars in Vedic literature. And collectively, they represent the seat of spiritual learning. When we hear of Kashi, this is the spiritual capital of India. So the most brilliant, they have an organization, they have 500 of the most brilliant people in the scriptures in India. And it is this organization that has given all the other Jagat Gurus their title. So when they heard of Kripaluji Maharaj, they invited him. This is to give you the history in 60 seconds. They invited him to speak in this meeting amongst these 500 topmost scholars. And so there Maharaji had to speak for 10 days. He spoke for 10 days in pure Sanskrit, based on the Hindu scriptures. And not only did he speak, but he reconciled all the contradictions, or at least the apparent contradictions between the various Hindu scriptures, the differences that we think there are in the Hindu scriptures, and there are differences between the views of previous Jagat Gurus. For example, Jagat Guru Shankaracharya would say, just worship God as unseen, not with a form, etc., etc. And then there's another Jagat Guru who comes and says that God is Vishnu and Lakshmi, etc. So for those of us who don't understand the scriptures properly, then that is seen as a contradiction. When Maharaji spoke for 10 days in front of these 500 scholars, then he convinced them because he reconciled the differences in the scriptures, and he recommended a path from the scriptures to God realization for all human beings. This path is now called Bhakti Yoga. One of the biggest Bhakti Yoga movements in the world today started by him since Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And so, with great admiration, these scholars, they accepted. After listening to Maharaji for 10 days, then now they're supposed to question him. They did not question him because they accepted at that point that his knowledge was deeper than the combined knowledge of all 500 of them put together. And so they unanimously acclaimed him as Jagat Guru, the spiritual master of the world. But they also give him, in addition to that, gave him another title as Jagat Guru Tam. Tam means supreme amongst all Jagat Gurus. Why? Because he reconciled the differences of all the Jagat Gurus. So when we talk about Sharad Purnima, we remember Ras Leela, and for those of us on the path of bhakti, then we also know that, Bhakti Rasa Avatar, Kripaluji Maharaj also descended on this Sharad Purnima night, and we can celebrate his coming as he's leading the way in Bhakti Marg for devotees who want to attain God realization. One more thing before we close here. This is also an auspicious month. This month is called Kartik. Many of you know this month, Kartik. We call it, in the end of this month, we call it Kartik Purnima. Kartik Purnima means, in the West Indies, we call it Tirat, right? Tirat means when we go to the ocean, to the Ganga, when we take a shower there, a bath in the Ganga. But that is to the end of this month, all the way to the end. But during this whole month, this is a very, very auspicious month, starting on the first day, which is today. There are many, many beautiful, very meaningful occasions in this month, spiritual occasions. The first one is actually in a few days. It's called Karwa Chauth. Ladies know Karwa Chauth because the ladies, married women, they fast on this day, on Karwa Chauth. Chauth just means the fourth day. I think this would be on the 3rd of November, which is about 2 or 3 days from now. Okay, yeah, so today is the 1st, so I think this will be election day, right? So the 3rd will be Karwa Chauth for, married women. They fast for the welfare of their husbands, right? So this is a traditional thing, Karwa Chauth. But there is also the 5 days of Diwali in this month, starting from Dhantiras or Dhanvantri Trayodasi. Then there's Narak Chaturdasi, then there's Diwali, then there's Govardhan Puja, then there's Bhai Dooj. 5 days of Diwali. Also in this month, this Kartik month, there's also Tulsi Vivah. Beautiful katha in the Puranas. There's also another most beautiful celebration that's called Gopashtami. Gopashtami is with Bhagavan Sri Krishna and his interaction with the cows and the calves and his friends in Vrindavan. And of course there's Kartik Snan that I mentioned earlier, but those are occasions in this month. But this entire month is called Damodar Mas. Like how we say Adhik Mas. Just recently we had an extra month and we call it Adhik Mas. This month is actually called Damodar Mas, the month of Damodar. Who's Damodar? Little Krishna is called Damodar. This entire month, Vaishnavas especially, Vaishnavas are devotees who, pray to Bhagavan Vishnu, Sri Krishna, Sri Ram, etc. They celebrate this month as Damodar Mas because this is the month where Bhagavan Sri Krishna, it is, there are so many verses in the scriptures in Skanda Puran, in Padma Puran about the importance of this month. So we'll discuss more of that as we go on with our Sunday morning satsang. But his entire month is called Damodar Mas, and the reason why they call it Damodar Mas, here's just to quote you a scripture from Skanda Puran. It says, Na kartika samo maso, na kritena samam yugam, na veda swadisham shastram, na tirtham gangaya samam. Here this verse from Skanda Puran is saying that there is no yug, there is no period of time like Satyug. This is the first period of time, like how this is Kali Yuga. There is no greater period like Satyug. Nakritena samam yugam, no time like Satyug. Navera sadrisham shastram, there is no greater scripture than the Ved. Natirtham gangaya samam, there's no better, more holy place than the Ganga. And in the same way, Nakartika Samo Maso. Maso here means month. That there is no greater month than the month of Kartik. This is written in Skanda Puran. the Padma Puran, also there are many, many verses there that helps us to understand the greatness of this month. We'll talk about them more as we go on with our satsang. But in the month of Kartik, there's also a Kartik Stuti, right? Or you can call it, a Kartik Ashtakam. This can be found actually in the scripture also. It can be found in Padma Puran. It can also be found in the Sri Hari Bhakta Vilas in the second chapter. So in closing, those are all the things that are happening this month. So let us just chant this one verse, because you can use this as your prayer during this month, in addition to all the other most beautiful occasions this month. Remember, the entire month is called Damodar Mas. And we'll talk more about that next week. Damodar Mas is, this verse explains what Damodar Mas is. This is how it goes. Namamishwasi cha Namamishwaram Sachidanandarupam Lasatkundalam Gokule Bhajamanam Namamishwaram Sachidanandarupam Lasatkundalam Gokule Bhajamanam Yashoda Biyoluk Le Dhavamanam Yashoda Biyoluk Le Dhavamanam Paramrishtamatyantatho Dupagopya Paramrishtamatyantato Dupagopyo. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So this verse, this is like I said, it's in the Padma Puran. This is a conversation. Of course, the Padma Puran by Krishna, by Panya Vyas, Vyas Maharaj as we know him. But this is one of the 8 verses, and it says here that the Supreme Lord, Bhagavan Sri Krishna, whose form is the embodiment of eternal existence, whose earrings, it's explaining what really Damodar Leela is, that the same Bhagavan whose earrings are swinging to and fro. Why is it swinging? It's swinging and it's shining beautifully in Gokul. It's swinging because a little Kanhaiya is running. Why is he running? He's running away from his mother Yashoda Maya. Why? Because he's created some mischief. He's broken the pot, the pot, the butter pot, which is usual with him. And so now he's pursued by Yashoda Maya, and he's running, and his earrings are swinging and they're shining. But this little Kanhaiya was caught. He was caught from behind by his mother Yashoda. And so this Damodar Stotra, this Damodar Ashtakam is explaining this whole Leela beautifully. Like I said, it's written in the scriptures. We will do more of that. Maybe next Sunday we'll explain this Katha. But just to give you a little preview of what this month is, Damodar Leela, this is the Leela. The rest we'll hear in another satsang. But keep little Kanhaiya in mind when he's caught by his mother, and he had to be restricted. There's a way that Yashoda Maya tried to bung. She bunged Kanhaiya to something that she thinks that he cannot move away with, and then he used that opportunity to create joy for some other human beings, some other beings in Gokul. So we'll talk about that more. We're out of time for today, but before we close, please do remember all these most beautiful occasions this month, in the entire month. And remember, Karwa Chauth is coming up for our mothers out there, young sisters with their husbands. Karwa Chauth, and then Diwali is coming up soon. So in this, during the occasion of Ras Leela, there's a beautiful bhajan that can be sung. So I saw Ras Racho Vrindavan. Not sure if you have the lyrics, but try to group your voices together. This is how the celebration took place during Ras Leela. We'll sing this bhajan before we close. वैसो रास रचो Vrindavan. Meaning that this is how the Rasa Racho, Bhagavan Sri Krishna danced with all the gopis in such a leela. Bairahi payal ki jhankar. You know payal, the what we call it, ghunguru, the footwear. Jhankar means the beautiful noise it's making. You know when you dance with ghunguru on your ankles. So the bhajan explains this celebration. Aiso Rasa Racho Vrindavan. Aiso Rasa Racho Vrindavan. Aiso Rasa Racho Vrindavan. Nubay rahi payal ki jhankar. Nubay rahi payal ki jhankar. पायल की झंकार वही रही, पायल की झंकार वही रही, पायल की झंकार वैसो रास रचो वृंदावन, वैसो रास रचो वृंदावन. घुंघरू खूब छमा छम बाजे. It explains here all the different, घुंघरू is chamacham, making a beautiful sound. Bajate bichua bahutai baje, that even the rings are worn on the toes for making sound. Ang ang me gahna baje. Ang means all the limbs of the body are all making beautiful sounds during the Ras Leela. Churiya Niki Jankar, that all the bracelets that are wearing on the, churiya, chura, we wear a bracelet on our hands. They're all making beautiful sounds during Ras Leela from all the gopis. Gunguru khub chama cham baje. Gunguru khub chama cham baje. बजते बिछुआ बहुतै बाजे. बजते बिछुआ बहुतै बाजे. रवा कौंधनी के हो बाजे. रवा कौंधनी के हो बाजे. अंग अंग में गहना बाजे. अंग अंग में गहना बाजे. चुरियन की झंकार हो. अंग अंग में गहना बाजे. चुरियन की झंकार ऐसो रास रचो वृंदावन. ओ बह रही पायल की झंकार. ओ ऐसो रास रचो वृंदावन. ओ बह रही पायल की झंकार. बाजे भांति भांति के बाजे,
बाजे भांति भांति के बाजे,
झांझ पकावज धुंधुबी बाजे,
झांझ पकावज धुंधुबी बाजे,
झांझ पकावज धुंधुबी बाजे,
झांझ पकावज धुंधुबी बाजे,
सारंगी और महुबर बाजे, सारंगी महुबर बाजे, बंसी बाजे मधुर मधुर बाजे वीणा के तार,
हो बंसी बाजे मधुर मधुर बाजे वीणा के तार, ऐसो रास जो वृंदावन बह रही पायल की झंकार, ओ ऐसो रास जो वृंदावन बह रही पायल की झंकार,
पायल की झंकार बह रही, पायल की झंकार बह रही,
पायल की झंकार, ऐसो रास जो वृंदावन, ऐसो रास जो वृंदावन बह रही पायल की झंकार,
बह रही
पायल की झंकार,
बह रही
पायल की झंकार।
प्रेम से बोलो दामोदर भगवान की जय, रास लीला भगवान की जय।